So I kind of wanted to share something about my childhood and about how I talk about like my mom and stuff like that, because I'm pretty sure she's like going around and telling people how crazy I am and nuts. And yeah, I did have a nervous breakdown in 2018, but it didn't, it was kind of like a catalyst to my healing. Now, in 2018, I had a nervous breakdown. I had been taking care of my grandfather. As I had previously mentioned, I was going to school full time for clinical lab science. And I was already in like a weird state as it was, because previously my grandmother passed. She suffered from lung cancer for about 3 years. I watched the woman that was my mom. She was my real mom. She took care of me and my best friend, and I watched her wither away and to nothing, and eventually pass. It was very traumatic, and what I remember with her was when she did pass away, I went numb, and that's the worst feeling. When my grandfather passed, I felt everything because I wanted to. I didn't want to feel that numb nothingness ever. It just like I shut down, and that was kind of like stems from a defense mechanism I got when I was a child. When I was a child, my mom was quite abusive. She won't admit to it now, and she never has. And that's usually the case with narcissistic parents. A lot of times they'll go in on a child that they look at as problematic, or blames me for whatever she didn't accomplish in life because it's never their fault. She used to tell me horrible things, mean things that she maybe doesn't remember. I don't know if she does or she doesn't, but or if she was just doing the classic gaslighting technique when I finally brought it back up. And it used to screw me up. It used to really screw me up because my family tends to sweep things under the rug, and in typical honor their mother and father fashion, they would tell me she'd be doing like horrible things. She once told me that she was sorry it was too late to have an abortion. I was young. I was very young, and nobody should ever hear that. Not a kid. So when I did bring that back up to her later, like in 2018, actually, she had moved back in with us. And see, here was the thing. Me and her had such a rocky relationship growing up. My grandmother used to protect me from her, and she was constantly like doing crazy stuff to me, but then would turn around and tell people that it was me, like I was a bad person and that I was a liar and stuff. And it just wasn't true. But you start to believe that you're a horrible person, and that's why your mother doesn't love you. Anyhow, so you start believing that, and then you have your family members telling you this was always, she's still your mother. She's still your mother. Yeah, but my mother's doing really horrible things to me, so why is she doing that? And so it screwed me up, and I would be depressed and just was so unhappy growing up, and I thought there was something wrong with me for the longest time, right? So in 2016, my grandma passed, and my defense mechanism was basically, and this comes from when I was a child, she would make me cry, and when I would cry, she would go in on me and tell me that you're a bad person, that I act like I'm big and bad, but look at me, I'm crying like a little baby now. And that taught me to be cold ice, to not have feelings. Feelings to me weren't okay. I didn't want anybody to see them. So I would just shut down, and I learned to be robotic and like separate everything. And that's why when my grandmother passed, I just went numb, because that's just how I dealt with stuff. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how. But that, like I said, that feeling was like a void, just such a void of nothingness, and such a horrible feeling. If I had to do that or go to where when my grandfather passed, I felt every bit of it, and it was so raw, still would take that. I still would take that. So I dealt with that a lot, and in my head, I was like, there's something wrong with me. I can't love this woman, and I don't know why. Like, I would try so hard. And it wasn't in me. It wasn't in me. And they would be like, oh, it's still your mom, still your mom. Yeah, but this is the thing. Like, you can forgive people, but you don't have to put yourself through that abuse anymore. So anyhow, I have been going through it, and she lived with us. And when she lived with us, I had just like bad things. Like, it was so bad. It was just so horrible. Such a horrible time when she lived with us. It was always fighting. Anytime she would go around people, there were like fighting, like, I mean, physical fighting. I would watch her fight with everybody, to where I read somewhere and I seen it, and it kind of hit that children that watch violence have the same brain patterns and waves of soldiers that have been to war. And I guess it's true. And I had worked to forgive her, and we kind of had like a relationship somewhat, to where I could tolerate her in small doses. Now something happened, and she had to move in with me and my grandfather while he was sick. And at that point, I thought I was okay, and I had forgiven her, or I thought I did. I forgave her, but it was kind of like that surface level, I guess. I didn't really dive deep into the shadow of it, or how I really felt. So I forgave her, or like I said, I thought I did, and she moved back in with us. And it was one night, I had worked all day, and I heard my grandfather screaming like bloody murder. So I come out to see what's going on, and it's her and him, and she's threatening a 70-something-year-old man that she's gonna punch him in the face. He's sick, he's got like veins popping out, and I'm trying to placate him. I'm telling him, go inside, please go inside, calm down. And she's screaming to him, and it was a trigger for me, because she goes to him, you were never a father, you this and that and the other effing thing. And it triggered me, because I'm like, how dare you? How dare you? All the things that you did, all the things that you did to me, and you want me to forgive you. And I did. I tried. And it triggered PTSD that I didn't even know I had. And it came out, and I started breaking. All the things that I had stuffed down inside, they started coming to the surface, and you could see it. I previously walked around with a smile plastered on my face, but now you could see how torn up I was, and that I was breaking, you know. A part of it too was I was doing too much. I was working full time, and on top of it, I was working with a narcissistic boss that would really treat me horribly, and I didn't know that people were this cruel. So at the same time, I would tell him the things that my mom would do to me, and why, like, it was bothering me that she was back in the house, and he thought it was funny to do it to me, to tell me things and like have me in tears, and to be like, oh, what are you gonna cry? Until my grandfather passed, and I went through his stuff, and I found the deposition when I was taken away, November 1984. I found the deposition, and I showed it to him, and then I guess he felt like shit, or maybe not, because he was a narcissist too, so probably didn't even like faze him. He was just like, whatever. So he had been going in on me, and this guy, for whatever reason, because he would treat me really horribly. He would call people over and be like, Jackie thinks this, isn't it stupid? She wears stones, she wears rocks, look at her, she's stupid, you know? Or, hey, this is what she thinks. And I would be like, okay, that's fine. For, you know, you don't have to agree with anything that I think. But he was just like really cruel. And as I previously mentioned, my mom kind of trained my sister to hate me. So my sister would go in on me too. They would tag team me. And it was funny because like I could do and say things, she could do and say things, and then like I'll complain about the same thing later, and my sister would go take whatever side was opposite me. I kind of had an idea this was going on. So anyway, so in 2018, this is what I'm dealing with. Dealing with my mom I'm having PTSD, and what really screwed me up was I have a really, really, really good memory. I have something, I don't know if this is the proper way to say it, but I know it's like hyperthymesia. I know where my memory is ridiculously good. It can be both a blessing and a curse depending on what you remember. So I have that, and like a lot of times I would be stuck on it and wondering like what was wrong with me, why can't I love her, what's wrong with me, I'm trying, I thought I forgave her, but so I'm all screwed up. And on top of it, my grandfather had a piece of his lung removed, and a lot of my freedom was taken away that way because I really didn't have help with anyone. Didn't bother. My mom portrayed the picture that she was helping, but at the same time she's saying that she's helping, she would always be like, oh, I would take him to this doctor's appointment, but I don't want to drive. I would do this, but I don't want to do it because, yeah, because basically you want to look good, but you don't want to do the work. And then like every day she would go in on him and be like, oh, he's this and that, I hate him so much, I hate him. But the day he died, she goes, oh, we really got close this year. So it was like I was going through it, and I know I was going through it. So I had posted something on Facebook to my cousins because I missed them and they were in their own world and never around for me when I needed it, as per usual. I posted that I was feeling broken. That was my cry for help. I was feeling broken, and that was a lot for me to even say that because I never let people see my feelings. I thought they were weak. And my aunt saw it, and my aunt loves to gossip for no reason other than she has nothing going on in her life, I guess. I don't know, whatever. So she told my mother had been in the hospital and she had a heart attack, and I didn't care if she passed, to be honest with you. I could care less, but I was hurting because my grandfather was passing, and I had done this already with my grandmother, and he was my father. So my aunt asked me, why are you hurting? Because your mom's in the hospital? And I was blatantly honest, and maybe shouldn't have been. And I said to her, no, I don't care if she dies. Now she went back and told my mom. So now my mom wanted to fight with me. I'm going through it, and instead of helping me, you're gonna kick me while I'm down. And I was open about everything, and basically she took responsibility and accountability for nothing. She gaslit me. She said everything that I remembered never happened, and it crushed me because I'm like, I'm suffering, and this is how you walk around with a smile on your face. Either you don't care, you're psychotic enough not to care, or you really just don't remember it. And I guess ignorance is bliss, right? So that crushed me, and I was just like, right there, I was like, okay, it's one thing to forgive, but if you're not going to take accountability for stuff that you did and change, you're not going to change. And she really never did. She just hides things better. I don't know. So me and her had it out. Then I come to find out, while my grandfather's sick, she's telling him that my grandmother dying from cancer is his fault while he's sick. The man had nothing. The man had nothing. And he's sitting home all day with nothing but his thoughts, sick as a dog, couldn't go out, lost such a quality of life that he used to have. And you're going in and making him feel worse and telling him about her illness is his fault, her death is his fault, and that he's just bad and this and that and the other thing. But she loves God and she's a sinner, so it's okay. You know, she goes to church on Sundays, so that makes that okay. That makes being a cruel person okay. So me and her had it out because my aunt told her, and she goes, "I hear you want me to die." And I was honest about it. I said, you know, quite honestly, I don't care if you do or you don't. So then she starts going in on me, and I said all the things that I should have said previously, because it all started coming out. And I told her that my sister has problems because of her. And then I seen it. She goes outside and she calls my sister, and my sister starts texting me about, "You're terrible, you're this, you're that, nobody loves you, nobody wants you here, why don't you just go away?" So you could clearly see how much pain I was in. And if you would have seen the state I was in, how you could just do that. And from what I understand, I asked a friend of mine, and I was really going through it. So I had a breakdown. And my boss thought it was amusing, and my sister thought it was amusing. She was the happiest she ever had been. And that to me was just such a hurtful thing. I don't understand the cruelness of people. Don't get me wrong, I've done screwed up stuff. But to see somebody in pain, in the pain that I was in, and know that they were okay with it, was what got me. And but at that time it was weird, because my mom used to fight with me all the time. And the dynamic was this: she would either blackmail me, she would steal from me, she would fist fight with me sometimes, tell me horrible things, and then later come with tears in her eyes, which I've seen crocodile tears, because I've seen her turn them off, like, very quickly. She would come to me and be like, "I'm sorry, do you forgive me?" And I know I've always been a forgiving person, and that's the thing, like, forgiveness, yeah. And then she'd do it again. That's classic narcissistic abuse. They gaslight you, they hoover, and then they do it again, and it's worse. It gets worse and worse. So, but that time I sat and I spoke to her, and she immediately popped into, it was your grandma's fault, it was your grandfather's fault, it was Maureen's fault, it was this one's fault, it was that one's fault. And I'm like, oh wow, like, no, it's never her fault. And I said to her, I said, listen, I said, maybe one day we'll get it together again. And I said, but for right now, you are just too toxic for me, and I have no purpose for you in my life. We can't be around each other. I need to heal. And she was like, I'm gonna be moving out. I said, I think that's best. And then I had to go apologize to my grandfather. I'm like, I'm sorry we were fighting, because he was really sick at the time. And he looked at me and he goes, well, you need Jesus. And I'm like, stop. I'm like, it's not about me being a good or bad person. I'm like, and then for some reason it clicked with him, and he looks at me and he goes, I'm sorry, Jackie. He goes, did I do that to you? And I was like, no, it's okay, like, whatever. And he goes, he starts telling me about what she was doing. It was kind of like if you ever see Diary of a Mad Black Woman, when the guy's like, and she's sick and like she's pushing him with the wheelchair and stuff like that. That's what it reminded me of. Like, and he's telling me, and I was so mad, and I was just like, when she told me she was gonna go, I was like, yeah, I think that's best. And I forgave her, but I told her, I was like, no, you have no room in my life, and I didn't let her back in for a bit. But then they would use the kids later on, and that would always get me. Even when my grandfather did pass, it was weird. I was talking to her because we had gotten back together for Christmas, because they're like, oh, we miss you, this, that, and I missed and the kids miss you, because if I was having issues with my sister and my mom, I wasn't allowed to see my niece and nephew. They used them like as if we were going through a divorce. Also, another thing that really screwed me up was during the pandemic. I was working in the hospital. And I'm trained on infection control, and it was like maybe a year after the first Thanksgiving after my grandfather had passed, and my sister and her decided that I couldn't come to Thanksgiving or around the house, and they used it under the guise of it, oh, we're scared about the pandemic, okay, I could have suited up, I could have got tested, but I had to sit alone on Thanksgiving and Christmas with thoughts of what used to be, with my grandfather being gone, and isolated, and just felt horrible. And the thing was, like, people, and when you tell people about that, they're like, oh, the pandemic was scary. Yeah, it was. But if they really cared about that, they were constantly going out to Walmart and the mall, and they had a play date with somebody and exposed my niece and nephew to COVID. They didn't get it, but so clearly that wasn't the issue. It was that it was me, and it was a way to abuse me and isolate me, because I was such a bad person. But anyway, I had my break in 2018, and I knew I had a breakdown. I knew I was going through it, because all the emotions I had buried down were coming out. They were purging. And for some reason, I don't know why, it was this one article I read, and it was about narcissistic abuse and how it wasn't my fault. And for the first time, I started to understand, no, it wasn't my fault. There wasn't something wrong with me. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are many things wrong with me. Where do I begin on that one? But it wasn't me. I was abused. And that's why I couldn't love somebody who did those things to me. But after that is when I started going through it and started doing my shadow work. And now I'm very open. I didn't speak about a lot of things because I was very quiet all the time. Like, I was scared to speak. I don't know why. But now that I'm speaking about things that have always been, people are seeing me, and they're like, oh, she must be crazy. She must be crazy because I had a break. Yeah, I did. Anybody would have. And to be able to come back from what I came back from so many different times, like, there's no way. But people will say, they're like, oh, it's okay to not be okay. But is it? Go figure. But I hope this helps somebody to understand that it's not you. It's not your fault. I hope it helps somebody. I really do. I hope it helps.